AI is a tool, not a strategy, but look at hard ROI on the use case. What are you actually saving? If you can't put hard dollars with it, then it's fluff.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Resilient Supply Chain Podcast. My name is Tom Raftery, and with me on the show today, I have my special guest, JP. JP, welcome to the podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself?
So it's JP Wiggins. So I'm a CEO of a company called GLog. Talk about what we do here in a little bit, but my background comes from, I was co-founder of another company called 3G TMS, which is now a TMS part of Descartes Systems. And before that, I spent about 10 years at SAP on the travel and transportation business side. I was also one of the co-founders of a company called GLog, which is now Oracle Transportation Management. And I also was general manager at Descartes Systems. And then we go into ancient history, but that's before punch cards and computers.
You've been around.
Yeah. So specifically, I'm a supply chain person. I focus on logistics and transportation, and really, really thick into TMSs.
And what does one log tech do in the broadest sense?
So in the broadest sense, we're an integration platform. What we've done is we've taken integration to make it a configuration task versus a development task. So we're like a report writer for integration, and that allows a normal business user to just sit and configure report to integrate your truckload carriers, your LTL carriers, integrate your customers. EDI, API, you can set up API without knowing how to code and set up EDI without even knowing what EDI is. You configure an integration. Different way of thinking about how to write software as opposed to a dev task.
All right. And what pulled you into the world of logistics integration? Why does this problem matter enough for you to build a company around it?
My background comes mostly from transportation management systems, TMSs and warehouse management, so TMSs and WMSs. And if you think of that, every TMS has to integrate to everything out there. It has to integrate to your ERP. It has to integrate to your warehouse systems. It has to integrate to a lot of external parties, such as carriers and 3PLs. And that challenge is a difficult one because there literally is a million carriers out there. There's more than a million carriers, actually. And then every type of carrier and shipper talk, there needs to be some type of data normalization because everyone set up their TM differently. They use reference fields differently. You have different workflows, and that comes from how you set up your ERP. So there's customizations required in all those. And the problem is that someone has to write that code. And so we've struggled with this in the TMS industry. My entire 30 plus years is having to have developers write code. And my co-founder and I thought of a better way, which is let's have the business users write the code. The technology is there to allow the creation of the solution. It wasn't there 10 years ago. It wasn't there 5 years ago. But now you can have a solution which allows, when you're setting up a trading partner in your TMS, like you set up a carrier for rates and tariffs, we'll set them up for integration also, just at the same time. It becomes a configuration task, not a dev task.
Why are logistics integrations still so complex and slow? We're decades into digitalization. What's holding things back?
Well, there's so many different players on the tech stack. Like I said, there's a million carriers out there. If you add in third-party logistics, I use the term LSP, logistics service providers. There's millions of them across the globe. There's literally over 1 million in North America alone. And they're all on different levels of tech stack, different technologies. And while there are standards, like EDI standards to how you pass data, like a status message has standards associated with it, people use those standards differently. And like I alluded to, everyone's TM system is set up slightly differently. They use fields slightly differently. They use different workflow. They want different types of data. And so typically there needs to be this normalization. So even though you might have a standard that tells you how to move data, no one's data comes in as standard, and it does need to be normalized. So that's why, like, you can set up a business network for finance. We see this in supply chain all the time. Suppliers and manufacturers can have a business network, which allows them to push orders back and forth, or you can push financial data. Those things are rigid and structured. Well, us in supply chain, terms don't mean the same thing everywhere you go. You might have a term that means this status message means one thing here and it means something different elsewhere. I did a project at Dan and Yogurt, and they selected us because we supported FOB terms. We had a full feature that supported the FOB. So we get there, and Dan and Yogurt says, well, I need this feature to support FOB. And I'm like, yeah, it's right here. And I shouldn't be. She goes, no, that's not FOB. FOB stands for fruit on bottom. And it's the way they process their fruit on bottom shipments versus their other shipments. So it's that normalization is a challenge for us in supply chain and logistics, is to normalize that data. And it means that somewhere someone has to write a point-to-point integration between every integrations. Yeah, you can come out with fancy systems to move code around, but still there has to be some business analyst that has to normalize the data between every shipper and 3PL.
And how does this complexity then affect resilience, especially when disruptions hit?
In the modern age, you need to be connected to your partners. Connected to your trading partners is not an option. You have to be. And people fall back to manual methods. Literally, there's still so much phone calling going on. I'm going to put an AI chatbot to make a phone call to a driver driving down Interstate 75 and ask them where they're at. I mean, that doesn't help. It's not really the right answer, which is the electronics, the telematics in that truck needs to be sending a message to the carrier's fleet system. That carrier's fleet systems need to be sending status messages over to the customer. And that customer then has to have that integrated into their control tower. That's what needs to happen. What's not happening is people just make manual. It goes back to manual modes. I'm going to send an email, I'm going to make a phone, and we're still stuck there. We're not connected. Or some people are, but for the most, you fall back into, especially brokerage moves for one-off carriers, you fall back into phone calling and check calling.
And what does an organization typically get wrong when they try to modernize this layer?
So modernizing this layer reduces a lot of manual complexity, but it also opens up the whole, I think we sell a lot to customers like running Oracle Transition Management or SAP TM or 3G TMS or, a modern TM platform. And they then struggle, they then can then turn that into a true control tower. Those modern TMs have a lot of complexity and business logic built into them that you could take advantage of, but you have to have that digital integration. When we talk more about AI has to have clean, consistent data for it to be able to do what it needs to do. It can't work if it can't see it. You can't ask an AI to do something that has no integration or connectivity to or visibility to. And that's the same thing in logistics. When you're modernizing, your modernization needs to have a connected strategy so that you're digitally communicating to your trading partners. And it's that simple. It's more than just signing up to somebody's network and passing simple EDI files. I mean, that's what we did in the 90s and turn of the century, pass EDI files before. Now you need to have direct real-time communications between the trading partners. And that's really what we're helping facilitate, is that direct real-time communications at an affordable road so that you can just do it, that you don't have to have multi-million dollars spent into some integration layer and dozens of developers that are coding, because what we see is backlog, technical backlog. A dev environment will be overloaded with requests. You bring on a new trading partner, you bring on a new customer, you bring on a new carrier. And then you also have, like, carriers might produce new levels of APIs, like LTL in North America here. We get LTL APIs all the time. They produce new versions of their API. Well, okay, who's going to go rewrite that? And then who's going to maintain that? And it's just because it gets so costly and timely to make those connections and maintain them. That's the challenge.
And how do you see the likes of AI and no code changing the integration landscape?
It's one of the things that we've been able to figure out to do is to let the business user make the integration. But the thing is underlying, you still have to have code running between the integration layer. Let's pick a status message. I'm going to go to a carrier and get a status message for them. This carrier may be sending me some type of EDI feed, or maybe they have an API that I connect to get that status message. Well, that's what the AI can do. The AI can actually look at the API and interpret the payload and set the templates for you. So like the AI can get you like 80, 90%, and the business user goes, oh no, wait, Constantine actually has this characters in it, or oh no, your ship dates are wrong, or oh no, you're using status fields in a wrong format. The business user can put their business intelligence, and then with the AI, it can actually then create a working integration. So we like to say AI augmented humans is really what's taking over us in logistics, is really helping. It's one of the big things. It's not like an AI replaced someone's job here, but they're augmenting the function of a human, and combined with a human and the business intelligence allows some really wonderful things to happen. We're seeing a lot of AI there that helps in logistics from that side. That's our personal use. There's other use cases. We can talk about SAP and Oracle. And I've been spending a lot of time at their conference, having come from both companies, sold mine to Oracle, and then also 10 years at SAP. And I know you from SAP too. And I'm also selling into those communities too for supply chain, really touch its base with what they're doing.
There's a lot of mixed feelings for various reasons around AI. So are you getting any pushback on the use of AI? Or are you just not mentioning that there's AI underneath the surface? Or how does that work for you?
I'm a startup. I've been around for a little more than 2 years now. And what was interesting is when I first went out to the market, it's amazing how uneducated the investors were on what AI actually is. And if you just put AI in a term, you're going to get invested. You're going to get financed. And that's how it was. It was just stupid. And then actually even going to a lot of the trade shows this past year, every development feature I've seen in supply chain, whether it's using a large language model, an LLM like OpenAI or Anthropic, something like that, versus let's say you have a developer that wrote a new feature that did some great if then elsing. Everything is being called AI now.
Sure.
Everything. It's a way overused term. But in direct answer to your question, we see this a lot more now. Is as we're bidding on projects, the sophisticated companies, like at the enterprise companies we're selling to, we're getting asked an AI questionnaire on how the AI is used because they're scared of it. They're scared of agentic AI that's making automated decisions, AI that's actually processing data. And does it have access to their private data? Does it have access
Mm,
to data restrictions? And we see this a lot in the security questionnaire. So there's a lot of scared companies about buying AI versus before it was like, oh, let me just buy it because it's really cool sounding. Too many people have been burned. And there's this a whole other security layer you're going to be going through when you're selling a product that has some AI in it. And
mm,
companies need to be prepared for what that is. So the business buyers are becoming much more sophisticated. But also, I'm seeing the investors. So many of those investors that invested in AI companies, I didn't go out as an AI company, even though it's in my software. But I do see, and I still talk to those investors where they're now learning, well, they made a lot of bad investments in AI. They're having to reinvest. A lot of companies, venture cap out there invested in AI 2 years ago, and they're now finding these companies are coming back asking for more money because of just bad business model. So this leads me to one of my core beliefs, which is I see AI as a tool. It's not a strategy. It's a perfect tool. It's another type of development methodology. I mean, I've been developing software and in software development companies my entire career for 30 some years. I have seen it go from simple DOS command line programming to the advanced techniques that we have now. And it's hard to separate these AI abilities from like even some of these modern tools that we have. So like, let's say I go use ProLogic and I write business rules and it's machine learning and it figures out how to rearrange some truckload tenders based on the time of day. That's an AI,
mm.
but it's a nice little piece of tool that's helpful because it'll help reduce manual workload. That's a practical use, is my point. It's a practical use of AI. It has real value. And so I like to sum it up saying AI is a tool, not a strategy, but look at hard ROI on the use case. What are you actually saving? If you can't put hard dollars with it, then it's fluff. And there's a lot of fluff out there right now. We're sorting through a lot of fluff, but it's like the dot-com era. We saw the dot-com era come, and there was a lot of dot-com things that just came out of nowhere, and then they just disappeared into nowhere. But yet, we're all using the internet now. It's just so ingrained into our whole business world, into the whole lifestyle. And that's the same with AI. Is there's going to be a lot of fluff for AI, but in reality, the tools are undeniably valuable in certain instances, and everything we do is going to have, or a lot of things that we do is going to have AI embedded into it. So that's why I come back to the term like the AI augmented human jobs that just have AI that help where AI makes sense.
Is there fear amongst the business users that this AI is coming in ostensibly to help them, but over time, are they concerned? Is there a concern there, or are they just embracing it blindly, or is it a spectrum?
I like to look at what are the big companies doing here. And I focused on SAP a lot on what their strategy is, and then also Oracle's strategy. And we can talk about those in detail if you'd like to. But the bigger companies are going to struggle with what they can and can't do with AI. A lot has to come back to data privacy and like SAP or even Oracle. You've got to worry about data privacy. You
Mm,
can't just have these models knowing everything like an OpenAI or an Anthropic that know everything because that's illegal in a B2B piece of software. You got to watch what you're able to do with it. And but we're business people. In a business world, you look at, well, do I want to put an extra 5 grand a month into this tool? Is it going to add value to me? So the business world is quickly learning what makes sense and what doesn't make sense because they're buying what makes sense and they're not buying what doesn't make sense. I think the days of buying AI just to buy AI are almost over, if not over already. Just invest in AI because too many people got burned too quickly. That bubble already burst for the most part. And business users, when they see a business case that makes sense, and that's what I try to do. I put things through a lens of what makes sense. What's a hard ROI? How is this going to improve my value? I'm not going to go buy this AI thing because it's some wonky, great sounding statement. And the overall thing is most people don't even understand what the heck AI is. It's hard. Oh gosh, here's this. You go to some of these AI conferences. Literally, I'm at this AI conference. This guy comes out there and he says, this is what he said. I had to write this down. Modern AI systems are transitioning from static parameter frozen interface engines to continuously adapting multimodal self-supervised architectures where gradient-free policy optimizations, retrieval augmented latency space modulations, and emergent agentic planning creates dynamic context reasoning pathways that are not explicitly encoded in the underlying model weights. And I'm thinking, great, how does that help me tender load to JB Hunt? The people that are trying to explain what their AI is versus the people that are trying to use it, you get into this whole gap. And that's what I try to be. Is I try to be this lens of, hey, I'm the supply chain guy. Let's put a lens on what's AI doing for me now? How's it going to help me? And what's fact and what's fiction?
Okay, well then, in that scenario, when operational teams, not developers, can configure integrations themselves, what's the kind of practical shift that you see there?
So from us, it's most companies that would have to go write an integration. Let's pick a move where I have to go do tendering, booking, document retrieval, status messages, invoicing, your classic moves that you talk to a carrier or a 3PL with. If that carrier has an API, it would usually take a dev team about 3 months. It would cost me about 10 grand in dev cost in 3 months time to do one carrier. With this modern tool we have, a business user, a single business user, not a developer, can use the AI and use my tool. And it's more than AI, it's the platform, and actually create a working integration ready for testing the same day. Let's say you used to have a report. You'd write up your report, you'd draft up the report, you'd write up the project specs, you'd turn it over to dev, and then they'd code it and they'd test it, it'd run through QA, and all of a sudden, boom, you got a report. Okay, that might take weeks, if not months. Versus now, you're using your Salesforce or HubSpot and you need a sales forecast report. It's just there. You're the user. You just build it. And then you configure it, you test it, you put it in production.
Okay, and when you've got these citizen integrators, what does that unlock and what still needs guardrails?
You're giving the citizen integrator a lot of rope to hang themselves because they can introduce things that are going to destroy their integration. You might have a working integration and they destroy it. And that's the normal conversation we get into with like our clients is in the sales process, I should say, is, well, what happens when a user does something wrong and it destroys the integration? I'm like, yeah, that can happen. But it's also like if you're running a TMS and you set up a carrier and you put in their rating guides and you put in their service areas, if you configure that wrong, that carrier is not going to be selected. That operation is not, that move isn't going to happen. So it's a configuration task though, but an operation user can still screw up their operations if they don't configure their tool right. They need to configure it right and test it. And that's the same thing that we think of in integration is that if you configure it wrong, well, okay, roll back, and we give them rollback abilities. So roll back to the previous version, but you should put it in production. You did test it. But it becomes configuration versus development versus a development effort because it's the actual end user that's actually doing the configuration and they can see if it works right there in real time and change it and update it. And if it doesn't work, they can roll back. It's a different way of looking at the world, configuration versus a dev task. But you're right. You give them a lot of rope to hang themselves because you're giving them total control over the integration, but you're also giving them total control to create a new integration from scratch versus wait 3 months. That's what we also see is like, let's say a problem does come up, and this happens all the time, you'll have some data comes through and there's a problem with it. The user can just look at it and correct it right there on the fly versus in the past, you'd have to put the error over to dev, open up a ticket, and then maybe contact the trading partner who sent the data in wrong and get them to fix it. And they open up a ticket and you might be looking 2 to 3 months and then it gets corrected. It happened to me last week. They were sending over ASCII characters and the sharp symbol came over. And old EDI systems can't interpret those ASCII characters. And it wasn't our system, but it was one of the destination systems downstream that was puking on the sharp symbol that came in some reference field. My user just literally just said, oh, wait a minute. Let me put in an Excel formula that says, if you see an ASCII character, change it to the word ASCII 35, which is the ASCII number for the sharp symbol. He put it in production. So then he told the carrier, stop sending ASCII characters, because it's affected my old EDI tool that I'm using down the road. Yeah, no, but it's exciting times. It really is. I mean, I'm seeing such advances in technology. I still say this every day. We're living in the future and it's great.
Yeah. And what kind of real world improvements do organizations see when the integrations go from weeks or months to hours or minutes?
ROI is big for just displacing a lot of different tools. You don't need to buy real-time visibility tools because you're getting the data directly from your trading partners. Like the carrier knows where their freight is. They can tell you directly a lot more faster. So it eliminates the need for third-party control towers. It lets you leverage your benefits of your own TMS. Let your own TMS become your control tower. Eliminate old school EDI. It doesn't need to exist anymore. You don't need those vans anymore. Just eliminate them together. Use a modern platform that's just more efficient. So you can eliminate that. And then there's 3 or 4 other types of things. Like if you got fleets and you want to bring in telematics data, bring your telematics data indirectly into the tool. So you could just set up these types of integrations. So in supply chain, we're all about B2B and trading partners. And that also means digitally connecting to your trading partners, not just in buying materials, that's covered under the trading networks, but in operations. And that's where we've really struggled, is getting B2B operations connected. And that's what we're really fostering, is that logistics. That's the name of the company, OneLog Tech.
Okay. And how does the shift the work of ops teams? What can they stop doing and what can they finally start doing that they weren't able to do before?
The big one is manually, like we talked about, like doing check calls or check emails. We still see in most parts of the world, people still send emails for getting all their loads tendered. They send a carrier, say, hey, pick up this load, and they send it over in an email. Even if you're running OTM or 3G or SAP, you're still sending emails for a lot of these loads that are one-offs, or they're sending it over to a broker, and the broker is then doing it all manually. They're manually connecting. They're manually calling a driver, establishing rates. Digitally connected eliminates those manual modes. Every TMS has the ability to directly tender digitally, to directly receive status messages digitally. They all have it. I mean, it's a core function. So to let you use those core functions and eliminate that manual mode, we become much more of an enabler of the AI tools. So there's AI tools that I see SAP and Oracle building into their TMSs, and these AI tools sense data, and it needs to sense data, sense what's going on so that it can then start making proactive decisions. And so just having good, clean data among the supply chain is what's important. And that's what I think, like if we want to talk SAP for a second, SAP's core strategy, if you look at their AI strategy, is, to run this Joule system. But Joule is actually, it's not their own AI, it's throttle for others' AI. You can make OpenAI or Google or Anthropic run through Joule. So they're not building the LLM, but then they put a wrap around it to keep it in balance and keep it throttled in. So you have access to those tools versus then you don't have to rewrite a whole LLM. SAP is not spending billions of dollars training an LLM. It orchestrates external LLMs is what I'm trying to say. The AI gets embedded into workflows and supply chain exceptions. I think supply chain exceptions and anomalies is really where these AIs really take off. And I see SAP doing a lot of making that as their aim, is to make it invisible to the tool. It just makes the software run better. So it's like an AI business platform. It's a different way to think of how AI actually works. If you want to compare or contrast to like what Oracle's doing, Oracle's strategy is they want to be the infrastructure for AI. They want to be if you look at exactly what they're doing with their Oracle DB23 AI, I think in simplest terms, they want to be the AI supercomputer that the LLMs are created and trained on. OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, pick the names. They want to be the tool that are used to create those AIs and the tools that the supercomputer that they're run on. Doesn't mean they still can't come up with AI agents within their platform. And I see a lot like in Oracle Fusion in the SCM tools and stuff where they're generating AI agents within those tools themselves. And this is why Oracle stock price has just gone through the roof, is that AI is actually running Oracle. They're the infrastructure, the DB, the data, the computing cloud, the Oracle cloud infrastructure is what's running a lot of those major customers, OpenAI, Kohi, XAI, things like that. That's all. And that's really what Oracle's strategy. And if I had to summarize the difference between the two, I kind of got to put it through the lens of supply chain. And if I put it through the lens of supply chain, I see SAP building a lot more apps for business, but Oracle is selling to the LLMs, which doesn't do a lot for me in the world, but that's just right now. But if you look at Oracle, they're putting billions of dollars into that structure, and SAP is putting a lot of money into their AI strategy. I kind of like what SAP is doing right now, but we'll see what Oracle does down the future. The bottom line, though, is I think if you're running like SAP and Oracle, and we can look at Blue Yonder and Manhattan and some of those other majors, they're where you should be looking to get most of your AI technology. If you're running one of these ERPs, look to your ERP provider for your AI technology, because it's just going to be embedded into your overall supply chain, because you want to control your entire supply chain. And I saw some great things at some of these shows where these AI tools are orchestrating across multiple tiers of the supply chain and trying to identify problems as they happen or before they happen, and then recommend changes If you have a tier problem here, change it here. You need some more suppliers here. And you're going to need more transportation here. So find some more carriers here. Those kinds of things across your supply chain. And that can really only be done by your internal ERP. You can't look for that external by some third party. Don't go look for someone that's going to be selling you some third party app that says, I got AI that's going to manage your supply chain. No, it's not. It doesn't see enough. It has to see your supply chain to manage it. And it has to see your inventory level counts. It has to see your production schedule. It has to see so much more than just your logistics. And it needs to see your logistics. It needs to see what's going on in your transportation, not just, you can't do one. You have to have the full picture. And that can only come from your ERP, in my opinion.
Sure.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is the Resilient Supply Chain podcast. So in your experience, have you seen any instances where faster integrations create resilience or sustainability gains?
The big problem with 3PLs have is connecting to their customers' ERP, connecting to their customer systems. Yeah, it's easy to maybe send EDI messages, but a true 3PL needs to connect to like my customer's SAP or IDS or Oracle or NetSuite. And it needs to be able to insert order data and like insert shipment data and receive order data and then turn them into shipments and give you statuses back and insert invoices. And that becomes a digital 3PL. And that's where resiliency comes in, because your customer doesn't want to pick up the phone and call a 3PL, doesn't want to send them emails. They want it to be digitally connected to their internal supply chain processes. They want to treat a carrier like another vendor where invoices come in and they pay those invoices. They want to send orders over and have them executed, and they want to know statuses back internally. They might need pricing quotes. So digitally connected provides resiliency for a lot of 3PLs in B2B communications, because once you're digitally connected as trading partners, it provides a platform to grow on. It also reduces costs on both sides. It makes it, if you don't have manual in there, it becomes cheaper for the 3PL to process and manage, to do a managed transportation function like to the shipper customers, so they can lower their costs. The first thing that comes to mind when you said resiliency would be that, is that digitally connected between trading partners provides a better resiliency, because it gives you a platform to build on, and then how to improve processes. And this is in general, shipper, carrier, whatever. Carriers don't want to have to deal with manual methods. Even since I'm booking a load with a trucking company, if that came into their fleet system automatically and then it got processed, that reduces them having to put a manual person to manage that operations, and that reduces their internal costs. Resiliency then also turns into cost benefit, and this can now scale. And that's what I like seeing right now, is that we're able to scale across not just the biggest company with those $1 billion IT budgets. Now, mid-sized and small companies can now be digitally integrated. And in fact, you almost have a economy of scale going on. It's an inverse economy of scale, because big companies, they might have been putting millions, if not tens of $1 millions into integration systems over the past 10 years or more, and they're stuck with them. They're stuck with old technologies, versus a smaller company that with manual can now go automated and digitally surpass maybe even some of their larger counterparts. Technology is the equalizer, right? The global equalizer, which if I can provide a digital integration service that's better than the top 10 3PL, then as a shipper, I'm going to go for the person that's going to charge me best and be digitally integrated.
Sure. And how do you see all this logistics, connectivity, digital integration evolving over the next 3 to 5 years?
I see rates being able to become much more dynamic. I see dynamic pricing becoming much more popular. I wonder about the evolution of brokerage process. Brokerage is still very, very manual right now. There's so much technology we're putting into brokerage, and the brokerage tools themselves, on the way they price, the way they're able to find loads, the way able to find carriers, and the way able to integrate. But they're still lacking digitally integrated to their customers. It's still, maybe an email comes over and saying, hey, how much to quote for this load? So I think that next step is that, where we're eliminating more of that manual, that we're able to just let supply chains be managed across the multiple tiers. And I think that's what's exciting to me, is when you see someone that's actually planning across multiple tiers of their supply chain, then they're able to truthfully, really dynamically optimize and truly reduce costs across your supply chain, not just looking at things, because we look at things too much isolated right now still. How does it affect me? How does it affect this specific piece? But when you look at a company's supply chain, it's much more of an ecosystem. I like that. And that's where I've always seen us evolving to ecosystem optimization. But that's kind of why I see us evolving much more that way. And to do that, you got to be integrated across the ecosystem. And we're not now.
So if you were advising a COO or a CIO today, where should they start in reducing integration drag?
Well, I would say it seems like every COO, CIO that we talk to, they've gone down that whole hype cycle on AI. And I think that's because they're bored and their investors have said, "What are you doing with AI?" You pick any company, they're going to have, "What's your AI strategy?" And I think we're starting to come through that hype cycle, though. I think that hype cycle has now kind of gone away. When it comes to the supply chain, there's only finite things that they can do. What's fact from fiction? And they're not going to get budget approval for an AI tool that doesn't have hard ROI right now. The advice I give a lot of CROs is bust through that hype cycle even more. Look at AI as a strategy. What is your strategy related to AI? And it's a tool, though. That's what I keep coming back to. Is sometimes you're going to have to push away your investors and board members because they don't understand. They're reading the hypes and they're pushing you to do things, and you need to come back with, here's my AI strategy, which is using AI as a tool, and we're going to be using it in certain use cases where ROI makes sense. And then here's my long-term strategy. But if AI is going to be part of your strategy, and it needs to be, clean, consistent data across your trading partners is what's super important. So then, yeah, integration becomes so much more important. We're now becoming so much more of an integrated world. And that's why you need a good integration platform. And that comes back to, like, if you have an AI strategy, your B2B strategy needs to be more digitally integrated with your trading partners. That core fits for one of the things we solve. We solve the logistics side of that. So it's core integration.
Okay. What's one thing leaders underestimate about modernizing their data flows?
A lot of times it's getting the partners to respond, even if they're a vendor. We see this a lot. It's like, while you can control your own integration in your company, you can make it easy to talk back and forth. Still, on the other side of the equation, you don't know what kind of tech stack your trading partner has and if they're capable of providing it and integrating it. And that's what the challenge gets underestimated a lot of times. It's like, oh, great, I'm going to integrate these data flows with you, but my partners can't integrate with me because they're literally still just using Excel files. Understanding the true abilities of your trading partners is one thing that I think gets underestimated constantly. I deal with carriers a lot, and every carrier, you go to 10 different carriers, you're going to get 10 different tech stacks. Some are going to be great, some are going to be old, some are going to be non-existent, and some are going to be modern, but they've implemented them the wrong way. It becomes a herding cats exercise. That it's everyone is completely different with their own mindset and their own tech stack. So that's one thing that gets underestimated a lot.
A left field question for you, JP.
Sure.
If you could have any person or character, alive or dead, real or fictional, as a champion for automating integration, who would it be and why?
I come back to science. I still like to look things from a scientific method more than anything. I use abbreviated methods for my scientific thoughts, but I also like people that just think outside of the box and just come to answers, but also have personality. So I'm a big fan of Stephen Hawkins as a character that was able to apply scientific properties, but then to know when to ignore them and to come up with some great new wonderful ideas that just think outside of the box. So I go Stephen Hawkins.
Fantastic. Okay. And we're coming towards the end of the podcast now, JP. Is there any question I didn't ask that you wish I did, or any aspect of this we haven't touched on that you think it's important for people to think about?
I think one is what AI is. I mean, that's kind of, if you don't know what AI is, it's easy to actually go ask the AIs what they are. All right. The thing to watch is that they're going to be overly helpful and too positive, and you're going to run into confirmation bias. All right. Understand that AI at its heart is pattern matching. It's
Hmm.
trying to find patterns and to bring those patterns together, but it can go down wrong patterns and take you down completely different rat holes. So it's important to understand what you're getting with these LLMs and how to use them, but they are invaluable in everyday use. Like when we first came out with the Google search engines, I think of them now as a very popular Google search engines, but understand, tune your AI, tell it don't be so positive towards you. It easily wants to do confirmation bias. Tell it to be much more critical. Ask it to
Hmm.
be significantly critical of your ideas and approaches, and then you're going to get better responses because these things develop a personality and they just want to be super nice and helpful and friendly. You want the right answer versus a confirmation error. Now, if you want to go believe the world is flat, your AI will teach you in undermining detail that the world is flat. And you can try to train it to do that. That's my point. Versus if you want to learn the right answer, and that's why I come back to like the Stephen Hawkins and that approach, which is think like a scientist, and if you understand the scientific method, you develop theories, you test those theories, but you could still come back and don't believe it as fact. Everything is still a theory, because even your most underlying core beliefs can someday be shown as wrong. But if you're not open to believe it, then you'll go through the rest of your life believing that your core theory was wrong. And that's the same thing with the AI. Once you go down a core belief, it'll keep believing that even if it's wrong. You can go on believing the world's flat, but trust me, it's not. But but that's what I mean. So that would be the core thing I would say to most people is tell your AI to be critical, and you'll get better results.
Yeah. Kind of a hack I use when I'm using LLMs is I use two at the same time.
Yes.
So I'll test one against the other and see, this LLM tells me this, is that correct? That kind of thing. So
yes.
Sanity checking, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Fully. I mean, I've seen the dang LLM, same LLM. We do a paid service with OpenAI here. And like in the same project, one of my guys searched this term and it came back and says, well, this is an Oracle TMS specific term used for such and such. And I used OpenAI on my side and it says, no, this term is a SIA specific carrier integration thing for sure. And I'm like, well, what about Oracle? No, it's not in Oracle. And he asked, what about SIA? He goes, no, it's not in SIA. And we're in a shared project where we're seeing each other's work. And I'm like, how can it be so wrong? So anyway, don't believe what these things say, but they can be super helpful and it does help. I love like writing emails where I tell it what I want it to write, but then it formats in nice, clean language. I write all my marketing materials. So I give it my points and then I ask it, like if I'm doing an email to a customer, to bring in some of my marketing points to a customer, it'll bring in some of those points. But I still, as much as possible, I'm telling it what I want it to do versus just going saying, hey, give me a marketing document. If you do that, you're going to get, it's much better when you tell it what you want it to do in more detail.
Cool. Yep.
Great.
JP, if people would like to know more about yourself or any of the things we discussed on the podcast today, where would you have me direct them?
Yeah, just oneblogtech.com. Obviously everyone's got a website. So oneblogtech.com. I'm on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn, JP Wiggins. Pretty easy to find. Ping me on LinkedIn or, hit us up on the website, and our contact info is on oneblogtech.com. So easy to find.
Perfect. Great. JP, that's been really interesting. Thanks a million for coming on the podcast today.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Glad to be here.